the bane of greenhorn adventurers far and wide. The Banshee is a formidable foe that can decimate a creature's will to live with a single, conscience-shattering howl. Originally brought forth from the depths of Irish mythology, the Banshee is usually depicted as an undead with the outward appearance of a sunken, ghostly pale woman whose mournful wailing was said to foretell the coming death of all who heard it. In life, the creature would have been an ethereal beauty, and would most likely have been incredibly narcissistic in nature, valuing their looks and expensive possessions above all others, often to the detriment of those around them. It's worth noting that in raw Dungeons & Dragons, Banshees are always depicted as elven, but while this may be the case for certain worlds, don't feel like this piece of lore restricts your creativity when it comes to creating your own Banshee, as each and every race has the ability to become just as corrupted and warped by their own perceived vanity and beauty. When death eventually finds these obsessive souls, they become judged, and if found wanting, the very essence of these narcissistic beings become warped and transformed into the Howling Banshee. Once this curse has fully enveloped the dying creature, they rise to find a gaunt, corrupted version of their former selves. Horrified by the sudden destruction of the beauty they once held so dear, a Banshee swiftly descends into a ferocious madness, blaming the mortal world they left behind for their downfall. In part because of this, Banshees absolutely abhor mirrors and reflective objects. These shimmering relics serve only as a reminder of the pure horror that is now their existence, and upon catching sight of themselves, a Banshee will be driven into an uncontrollable rage, unable to calm until the offending object, and any creatures relative to its area or appearance, have been completely and utterly culled. To add even more delight to this undying curse, a Banshee is unable to feel joy or happiness in any form, and is assaulted by a sense of deep unease and displeasure when in close vicinity to a living creature. This is especially exacerbated if the living creature happens to be beautiful, and this will drive the Banshee into even more of a murderous frenzy. On top of this, Banshees become bound to the place of their demise, unable to travel more than 5 miles from this site, forced to relive their previous lives with perfect recall. In every case, a Banshee is always unable to see the error of its ways, and will instead seek to blame everything and anything else for their downfall, murdering those who stray too close to their forlorn sanctums. As far as straight statistics go, the Banshee seems well geared for lower level adventurers to deal with, and would appear not much of a threat for those more experienced, higher level parties. With a pitiful 1 in strength, 14 dexterity, 10 constitution, 12 intelligence, 11 wisdom, and 17 charisma, the Banshee doesn't really seem like much to write home about. I mean, it does, however, receive a solid +2 to wisdom saves and a +5 to charisma saves, as well as boasting resistance to acid, fire, lightning, and thunder damage, as well as all damage from non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. They also have complete immunity against cold, necrotic, and poison damage, so don't even bother trying to whip out that cone of cold you had planned. The Banshee also laughs at conditions, with immunity against being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, restrained, or made prone, so there are just a few that you should try to avoid. But this is not the main bulk of what makes the Banshee one of the most deadly opponents in the entirety of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, if all of the above hasn't been enough to leave you a trembling wreck, it's best we step it up a level. On the abilities front, the Banshee cares so little about all things material that it gains the incorporeal movement ability. This grants it the power to move through other creatures and solid objects as if they were difficult terrain. If the Banshee ends its turn inside an object, it takes 5 or 1d10 force damage, but is not forced out of that space. This means that a Banshee could, theoretically, hide inside the very walls of a location it haunts, waiting for its latest victim to appear. Now, you would think that hiding within a stone wall would render the Banshee's senses all but useless. Oh, but of course, this undead abomination has something for that. The Banshee has an innate ability that allows it to detect life. The Banshee can magically sense the presence of creatures up to 5 miles away that aren't undead or constructs. It knows the general direction they're in, but not their exact locations. As far as creature abilities go, this one must frustrate the Banshee to no end, as their entire existence revolves around detesting the living. The saying "ignorance is bliss" would be embraced by the Banshee. However, the very curse that binds their souls to their undead bodies provides this extra twisted way of making sure the Banshee is punished to the full extent in death, completely removing their ability to bury their heads in the sand, keeping them aware of the existence of those they revile the most at all times. All of the previously mentioned characteristics are mere attributes and defensive qualities, protecting the Banshee just long enough for it to unleash its signature wail. And no, I don't mean Moby Dick. This howling attack is devastating and should under no circumstances be underestimated. A creature must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw, or be immediately dropped unconscious to 0 hit points, regardless of how many they had left before hearing the Banshee's sinister death scream. It doesn't matter what level a character is either. You fail that con save, and that's it. You're unconscious at 0 hit points. On a successful save, a creature takes a much more palatable 10 or 3d6 psychic damage, which can still be brutal for lower level characters. But is the Wail ability really that busted? Well, stepping aside from a serious situation for a moment, while not strictly rules as written, there are a solid amount of tables out there that play the nat 1 equals always fail, nat 20 equals always succeed rule. Going by that logic, an individual Banshee could hit the Tarasque, an ancient dragon, an Empyrean, or even a straight-up god with its Wail ability, and provided they are all out of legendary resistances, this would give the CR4 Banshee a 1 in 20 chance of instantly dropping them to 0 hit points, which would mean instant death in games where monsters and NPCs don't get the luxury of death saves. So yeah, theoretically, a Banshee could one-shot a god. Take that as you will. But anyway, tabletop silliness aside, let's get back to some more concrete lore. In a combat situation, the Banshee can also utilise its horrifying visage to force the frightened condition onto a creature. This requires a DC 13 Wisdom save to succeed, and the effects are nowhere near as crippling as Wail, simply forcing the creature to become frightened of the Banshee. A Banshee can also make a melee spell attack called Corrupting Touch, that has a +4 to hit and inflicts 12 or 3d6 +2 necrotic damage. This again can be brutal against less experienced adventurers. But why limit this howling catastrophe to just lower level parties? Well, to get around that, why not imbue a dragon with the wailing spirit of the Banshee, creating a dragon wraith, an incredibly narcissistic entity that will do just about anything in its power to stop others from stealing the hoard that it's so vehemently guarded in life. Dragons are arguably some of the most self-absorbed creatures in the entire world, so they certainly fit the aesthetic of the Banshee quite nicely. This creature could possess the trademark Wail ability, but cranked up to 9,000. Forcing a party encountering the creature to find a workaround or counter for this ability, prompting the group to research their spectral foe before diving headlong into their lair, expecting the usual draconic challenge. And the ability in question could read something like this. The Draganshi releases a mournful wail, provided that it isn't in sunlight. This wail has no effect on constructs and undead. All other creatures within 30 feet of the Draganshi that can hear it must make a DC 19 Constitution saving throw. On a failure, a creature drops to 0 hit points. On a success, a creature takes 32 or 9d6 psychic damage. To balance it somewhere in the middle, an undead nymph or beholder taking on the Banshee moniker could make for a truly evil encounter. Each of these creatures is just as self-absorbed as the other, with their delusions of grandeur only being exacerbated by the Banshee curse upon death. This curse could lead to a Banshee nymph desecrating a sacred druidic site in the name of their forlorn existence, or a Banshified beholder could be forced to haunt the site of its death, having been slain by a rival beholder, unable to secure peace in its untimely passing. Now, these are merely some ideas for how you could include the Banshee in a higher level game, bringing the Howling terror back into the focus of more practiced adventurers. However it is that you end up encountering the Banshee, these horrendous spirits have the potential to slay any enemy they come across, regardless of skill, power, or ability. All it takes to fall against these once irresistible elven beauties is a little lack of luck. Hello everyone, Ben here, and thank you as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video about the Howling Banshee, and I'd love to hear about how you have or plan to include or encounter them in your games. If you liked this video and would like to see more, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. The growth so far has been really awesome, and I'm super appreciative to all of you out there who watch and interact with my videos. So once again, thanks for the support, and there's plenty more coming soon. But until then, perhaps a neo-thelid creature feature will get your mind crawling. Or maybe this recommended content is more up your street.